The first rays of dawn painted the Napa Valley sky in soft pastels as Maya Chen pushed through the ornate iron gates of the Rosewood estate, her worn leather gardening gloves already damp with morning dew. The familiar weight of her tool belt around her waist and the thermos of coffee in her hand signaled the beginning of another perfect day in what she'd come to think of as her sanctuary. For 3 years, these 30 acres of meticulously planned gardens had been her canvas, her refuge, and honestly, her whole world. Every rosebush, every carefully placed stone pathway, every perfectly pruned topiary told the story of her dedication. Mrs. Eleanor Reed had given her complete creative freedom, and Maya had transformed the grounds into something that belonged in architectural magazines, though she'd never bothered submitting photos. This place was too precious to share with the world. She hummed softly as she made her way toward the greenhouse, mentally cataloguing today's tasks. The heritage roses needed deadheading, the Japanese maple section required some careful pruning, and she wanted to check on the new lavender plantings near the meditation garden. Mrs. Reed had loved that spot, spending hours there with her morning tea until her passing 6 months ago. Maya's steps slowed as she approached the rose garden. Something was off. The pristine morning quiet felt different, disturbed. Then she saw him. A man in an expensive-looking grey suit sat cross-legged on the stone bench beneath the climbing Eden Rose arbor, a laptop balanced on his knees, completely absorbed in whatever was on his screen. His dark hair was slightly mussed, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and his sleeves were rolled up despite the crisp morning air. Maya's coffee thermos hit the ground with a metallic clang. The intruder's head snapped up, revealing sharp green eyes and a face that probably belonged on the cover of Fortune magazine. For a moment, they stared at each other in mutual surprise. "Excuse me," Maya called out, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent years dealing with lost tourists and wandering wine tasters. "This is private property. You need to leave." The man blinked, then slowly closed his laptop. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize anyone would be here so early." His voice was deep, cultured, with just a hint of something that sounded like exhaustion. "Early?" Maya glanced at her watch. 6:30 a.m. "This is when real work begins. Some of us don't have the luxury of sleeping until noon." She gestured toward the gate. "The public vineyards are that way. This estate isn't open for tours." A strange expression crossed his features, something between amusement and confusion. He stood gracefully, and Maya noticed he was taller than she'd initially thought, probably 6'2" to her 5'6". "I think there might be some confusion." "No confusion at all." Maya stepped forward, her hands on her hips. "You're trespassing. I don't know how you got past the gate, but you need to leave before I call security." "Security?" Now he definitely looked amused. "What security?" Maya faltered for just a moment. The estate had never actually employed security, relying instead on its remote location and imposing gates. But this guy didn't need to know that. "Look, Mr. She waited for him to fill in the blank. "Reed," he said simply. "Alexander Reed." The name hit Maya like a physical blow. Reed, as in Eleanor Reed. As in the Reed family that owned this entire property. As in the grandson Mrs. Reed had mentioned occasionally, the one who lived in San Francisco and worked in tech and never visited. "Oh," she managed, feeling heat creep up her neck. "Oh, no. Ah, there we go." Alexander's smile was gentle, not mocking like she'd expected. "I take it you're Maya. My grandmother mentioned you in her letters." Maya wanted to disappear into the nearest flower bed. "I'm so sorry. I thought you were some random guy who'd wandered in. I didn't know you were. Mrs. Reed said you might visit someday, but..." She trailed off, realizing she was babbling. "Someday" turned out to be today. He gestured to the laptop. "Couldn't sleep, so I figured I'd work outside. It's beautiful here." "It really is," Maya agreed automatically, then caught herself. Your grandmother created something special here. I just maintain it." Alexander's eyebrows rose. Just maintain it. Maya, I've been walking around since 5 a.m. This isn't maintenance, this is artistry. The unexpected compliment made her stomach flutter in a way that was entirely inappropriate, given that she'd just accused her employer's grandson of trespassing. Thank you. I loved working with Mrs. Reed. She had such a vision for this place. Had, Alexander repeated softly. I still can't quite believe she's gone. Maya studied his profile as he gazed across the gardens. There was genuine grief there, mixed with something else, regret maybe. She talked about you often. She was proud of what you'd built in Silicon Valley. Did she mention that I hadn't been here in 4 years? His laugh held no humor. I kept meaning to visit, kept saying next month or after this project. Classic mistake, assuming you have unlimited time. The raw honesty in his voice caught Maya off guard. She'd expected someone entitled, demanding, probably planning to sell the property to developers. Instead, she was seeing someone who seemed genuinely affected by loss and regret. She understood, Maya said gently. She knew you were building something important. Was I, though? Alexander turned to face her fully. I built a company that makes apps for people who already have too many apps. Meanwhile, she was here creating something that actually matters, something lasting. Maya found herself really looking at him for the first time. The expensive suit couldn't hide the tension in his shoulders or the slight shadows under his eyes. Building a business is important too. You employed people, created something from nothing. Spoken like someone who's never had to lay off 30 employees because the board decided profit margins were more important than people. The bitterness in his voice was unmistakable. Is that what happened? Alexander ran a hand through his hair, the gesture that had mussed it earlier. Part of it. Let's just say I've recently learned the difference between being successful and being fulfilled, hence why I'm sitting in a garden at dawn instead of in another board meeting. Maya felt an unexpected stab of sympathy. Your grandmother would have been happy to know you found your way here eventually. Would she? Or would she have been disappointed that it took her death to get me to come home? Both, probably, Maya answered honestly. She was complicated that way, but she also would have said that timing doesn't matter as much as what you do once you arrive. Alexander's smile was the first genuine one she'd seen from him. That sounds exactly like something she'd say. Very Eleanor Reed. Did you know her well before, I mean? I spent every summer here until I was 18. She taught me to appreciate beauty, to notice details. He gestured around them. All of this was simpler then, but she always had grand plans. I'm amazed to see what it became. Maya felt a flush of pride. She had the vision. I just helped execute it. You're being modest. Alexander walked over to examine a particularly spectacular cluster of David Austin roses. These are perfect. The spacing, the companion plantings, even the way the morning light hits them. This is masterful garden design. You know about gardens? My grandmother made sure I learned. I can tell the difference between good work and great work. He looked back at her. This is great work, Maya. The way he said her name, with genuine appreciation, rather than the casual dismissal she was used to from wealthy clients, made her pulse quicken. She told herself it was just relief that he wasn't planning to fire her on the spot. Thank you, she managed. That means a lot, especially coming from Mrs. Reed's family. Speaking of which, I should probably ask, what exactly is our arrangement here? My grandmother's lawyer mentioned something about a caretaker, but the details were vague. Maya's heart sank. Here it comes, she thought. The practical questions, the evaluation of costs versus benefits, the inevitable conclusion that maintaining 30 acres of premium gardens wasn't economically viable. I maintain the grounds year-round, she began carefully. Full landscape design, seasonal plantings, irrigation management, pest control, pruning schedules. I work with a small team of contractors for major projects, but most of the daily care I handle myself. Alexander nodded. And you live on the property? There's a small cottage behind the greenhouse. Your grandmother insisted I stay close to monitor things properly. Maya braced herself. I understand if you want to make changes. Most people don't realize how much goes into maintaining something like this. Changes? Alexander looked genuinely puzzled. Maya, why would I want to change anything? This place is incredible. Because it's expensive, she said bluntly, and time-consuming. And most people would rather have a simple lawn service than deal with heritage roses and hand-pruned topiaries. Alexander was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Is that what you think I am? Most people? I don't know what you are, Maya admitted. I know you're successful and busy, and probably have a dozen other priorities. This place was your grandmother's passion project, not necessarily yours. You're right, Alexander said, and Maya's heart sank. This was her passion. But you know what I've realized sitting here this morning? Maybe it's time I found a passion of my own. Maya blinked. What do you mean? I mean, maybe it's time I stopped defining myself by quarterly reports and market share. Alexander gestured around them. Maybe it's time I learned what my grandmother was trying to teach me all those summers, that some things are worth nurturing just because they're beautiful. The sincerity in his voice made Maya's chest tight. And you think you could be happy here? It's pretty quiet compared to San Francisco. Honestly, I don't know, but I'd like to find out. Alexander met her eyes. That is, if you'd be willing to teach me. Teach you what? Everything. How to read the soil, when to prune, why certain plants work together, how to create something lasting instead of just profitable. His smile was self-deprecating. I might be a slow learner. I've spent the last decade thinking success meant moving faster, not standing still. Maya felt something shift in her chest. Surprise, hope, and a dangerous flutter of attraction she absolutely could not afford to acknowledge. Garden work is different from tech work. It requires patience, lots of trial and error. Some seasons, everything you plant dies and you have to start over. Sounds like every startup I've ever run, Alexander said with a laugh. At least plants don't require investor meetings. Despite herself, Maya smiled. No, but they do require you to be here consistently. You can't manage a garden remotely. Good thing I'm planning to stick around then. Are you really? The question slipped out before Maya could stop it. Alexander studied her face, his expression growing serious. Maya, I know we just met, and I know I have a lot to prove, but yes, I'm really planning to stick around. This place, it feels like something I've been looking for without knowing I was looking. Maya felt her carefully constructed walls waver. For 3 years, this garden had been her private kingdom. The thought of sharing it, especially with someone whose presence made her pulse race, was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. Okay, she heard herself say, but I have rules. Rules? Alexander's eyes sparkled with amusement. First rule, the gardens come first, always. No matter what crisis your tech company is having, no matter what calls you need to take. When you're here, you're present. Agreed. Second rule, you do the work, real work. Dirty hands, sore back, bug bites. No delegating because it's beneath you. Wouldn't dream of it. Third rule, you listen more than you talk. These plants have been here longer than both of us. They have things to teach you if you pay attention. Alexander nodded solemnly. Anything else? Maya hesitated, then decided to go for broke. Last rule, if you decide this isn't for you, you give me fair warning. Don't just disappear. These gardens need consistency. And you? The question was asked quietly, almost hesitantly. Maya felt her cheeks warm. What about me? Do you need consistency too? The question hung in the morning air between them, loaded with implications neither of them was quite ready to address. Maya looked into Alexander's green eyes and saw something that made her breath catch. Genuine interest, not just in the gardens, but in her. Everyone needs consistency, she said carefully. Then you have my word, Alexander said. No disappearing acts. Maya nodded, trying to ignore the way her heart was racing. In that case, welcome to your inheritance, Mr. Reed. I hope you're ready to learn. It's Alexander. he corrected gently. And I'm ready. And then, as they stood there in the morning light, surrounded by the gardens that had brought them together, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that her carefully ordered world was about to become wonderfully, terrifyingly complicated. So, Alexander said, breaking the moment, where do we start? Maya grinned, feeling more excited than she had in months. First lesson, always carry your own coffee. You're going to need it. 1 week later, Maya was seriously questioning her decision to teach Alexander Reed anything more complicated than which end of a watering can to hold. No, 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 she called out, rushing across the herb garden as Alexander attempted to prune the rosemary with the enthusiasm of a lumberjack. It's surgery, not demolition. Alexander stepped back, secateurs dangling from his hand, looking like a guilty schoolboy. His pristine khakis from day one had been replaced by jeans that actually showed dirt, and his hair was doing that adorable must thing again. I thought I was being decisive. You were being destructive, Maya said, examining the poor rosemary bush. Look, gardening isn't like your tech world where you can just debug problems with aggressive coding. Plants require finesse. Everything requires finesse with you, Alexander muttered, but his smile took the sting out of it. Did you just sass me? Maya raised an eyebrow, fighting back her own grin. Maybe a little. Over the past week, they'd fallen into an easy rhythm that surprised them both. Alexander showed up every morning at 6:30 sharp, dressed for actual work, with 2 cups of coffee from the kitchen. Maya had stopped questioning why her pulse quickened when she saw him walking up the garden path. Okay, watch carefully this time, Maya said, taking the secateurs from him. Their fingers brushed during the handoff, and she pretended not to notice the little spark that shot up her arm. See how this branch is growing inward. That's competing with the main structure. We want to encourage outward growth. She made a clean cut at a 45-degree angle, just above a healthy bud facing the right direction. The plant will put its energy into the directions we guide it, like teaching, really. Are you saying I'm like a wayward rosemary branch? Alexander asked, moving closer to see her technique. If the metaphor fits, Maya said lightly, very aware of his proximity. He smelled like expensive soap and fresh air, which was unfairly distracting. In that case, which direction are you trying to guide me? The question held more weight than plant care advice, and they both knew it. Maya glanced up to find Alexander watching her with an intensity that made her forget what they were talking about. Away from destruction, toward creation, she managed. Good direction, he said softly. Maya cleared her throat and stepped back. Your turn. Show me what you learned. Alexander took the tools with exaggerated care, studying the bush like it held the secrets of the universe. He selected a branch, positioned the secateurs, and looked to Maya for approval. Perfect, she said, and meant it. As he made the cut, Maya's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and frowned. Problem? Alexander asked. My biggest client just cancelled their spring installation. Something about budget reassessment. Maya tried to keep her voice casual, but losing the Whitmore account meant losing nearly a third of her income for the year. Alexander straightened. The Whitmores? I know David Whitmore. Want me to make a call? No! The response came out sharper than Maya intended. Sorry, I handle my own business problems. I was just offering to help. I know and I appreciate it, but I don't want clients who only hire me because a billionaire made a phone call. Alexander studied her face. You really don't like accepting help, do you? I like earning things myself, even when it makes your life unnecessarily difficult. Maya bristled. My life isn't unnecessarily difficult. It's self-reliant. Maya, there's a difference between self-reliance and pride. Oh, that's rich coming from someone who inherited 30 acres of prime Napa Valley real estate. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and cutting. Alexander's expression shifted, becoming carefully neutral in a way that reminded Maya exactly who she was talking to. You're right, he said quietly. I did inherit this, just like I inherited the money that started my first company, and the connections that opened doors, and the safety net that let me take risks other people couldn't afford. Maya felt heat creep up her neck. Alexander, I didn't mean... Yes, you did, and you're not wrong. Alexander set down the secateurs and faced her fully. I've had advantages my whole life. But that doesn't mean I haven't worked for what I built, or that everything was handed to me on a silver platter. I know that. I'm sorry. I just get defensive when people try to solve my problems with money or connections. Because you think it diminishes what you've accomplished. Maya nodded, surprised by his understanding. Maya, look around. Alexander gestured to the garden surrounding them. You created something extraordinary here. Not because of who you know or how much money you have, but because you have talent, vision, and incredible work ethic. One phone call from me couldn't make someone create this. The sincerity in his voice made Maya's chest tight. Thank you. But, Alexander continued, there's also nothing wrong with accepting help from someone who cares about your success. Cares about my success? Maya repeated, focusing on the dangerous flutter those words caused. Alexander's cheeks colored slightly. Of course, we're friends now, aren't we? Friends help each other. Friends. Right. Maya ignored the stab of disappointment and nodded. We are, and friends also tell each other when they're being stubborn and prideful. In that case, friend, you're being stubborn and prideful. Maya laughed despite herself. I walked right into that one. You really did. Alexander's grin was boyish and entirely too charming. So, can I at least help you brainstorm other approaches to the client situation? No phone calls, no throwing money at it, just strategic thinking. Maya considered this. What kind of strategic thinking? Well, what if losing the Whitmore account is actually an opportunity? Maybe it's time to focus on projects that really excite you instead of just paying the bills. Spoken like someone whose bills pay themselves, Maya said, but without heat. Fair point. But seriously, what would you do if money wasn't a factor? What kind of projects make you light up? Maya was quiet for a moment, surprised by how quickly the answer came to her. Teaching. I love sharing this knowledge, watching people discover they can create something beautiful with their own hands, like you're doing with me, like I'm doing with you, she agreed. But teaching doesn't pay enough to live on. What if it could? What if you offered workshops here at the estate, garden design classes, seasonal maintenance courses, maybe even corporate retreats focused on mindfulness and nature? Maya stared at him. The idea was so perfect, so obviously right, that she couldn't believe she'd never thought of it herself. The insurance alone would be a nightmare, she said automatically. Solvable problem. And liability issues, also solvable. Alexander, I can't turn your grandmother's estate into a business. Why not? She would have loved the idea of sharing this place with people who appreciate it. And you'd be here, making sure it's treated with respect. Maya felt excitement building despite her practical concerns. It would be a lot of work, curriculum development, marketing, scheduling. Good thing you know someone with business experience? Their eyes met, and Maya felt that dangerous flutter again. The idea of working together, of building something that combined her expertise with his business skills, was terrifyingly appealing. Are you serious about this? She asked. Dead serious. Maya, you have something special here, not just the gardens, but your knowledge, your passion for teaching. Why not share it with more people? Because what if I fail? What if no one wants to learn from some unknown garden designer in Napa? What if you succeed? What if you create something that brings people joy and teaches them to create beauty in their own lives? Maya looked around at the gardens that had been her sanctuary for 3 years. The idea of opening them up, of sharing them, was scary, but also exhilarating. I'd need help, she admitted. You'd have it. It would change everything. This place wouldn't be my private retreat anymore. No, but it would become something else, something that helps people. Maya took a deep breath. Okay, let's explore it. But as partners, Not as you rescuing my failing business. Alexander's smile was brilliant. Partners. I like that. Why, as they shook hands on their tentative agreement, Maya tried to ignore how perfectly her hand fit in his, and how the word partners made her think of things that had nothing to do with business. So, Alexander said, still holding her hand a moment longer than necessary, where do we start? With you learning to properly prune rosemary, Maya said, gently extracting her hand. Can't have my business partner destroying the teaching materials. As Alexander picked up the secateurs again, Maya watched him work with new eyes. Maybe accepting help wasn't about weakness after all. Maybe it was about recognizing that some things grew better when tended by more than one pair of hands. The thought should have been comforting. Instead, it terrified her in the most wonderful way. 2 weeks into their partnership planning, Maya discovered that working closely with Alexander Reed was like tending a particularly stubborn hybrid rose. Beautiful, promising, and capable of drawing blood when you least expected it. Absolutely not, she said, staring at the tablet he'd thrust into her hands. 50 people for the first workshop? Alexander, I was thinking more like 8. They were sitting in the estate's sun-drenched breakfast nook, the table covered with notebooks, printouts, and the remnants of the lunch Maya had insisted on making instead of ordering from that overpriced place in town. Alexander's tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up, and he had a smudge of dirt on his cheek from their morning session replanting the cottage garden borders. 8 people won't cover our basic costs, Alexander argued, pulling up a spreadsheet that made Maya's eyes cross. Look, if we charge $200 per person for a weekend intensive, we need at least 20 participants to make it worthwhile. $200. Maya nearly choked on her iced tea. Who's going to pay $200 to learn about composting? People who want an authentic luxury experience in wine country. Trust me, there's a market for this. Maya set down the tablet and rubbed her temples. Alexander, you're thinking like a tech CEO again. This isn't about scaling up and maximizing revenue. It's about sharing knowledge and paying your bills, Alexander pointed out gently. Maya, you can have noble intentions and still run a profitable business. They're not mutually exclusive. But what if we price out the people who really need this? What if we become just another expensive Napa Valley experience for rich tourists? Alexander leaned back in his chair, studying her face. What if we do both? Premium weekend intensives for people who can afford them and subsidized community workshops for locals? Maya blinked. You'd be okay with losing money on some workshops? It's not losing money if it serves the mission. Besides, the premium workshops would fund the community ones. The thoughtfulness of his suggestion caught her off guard. You've really been thinking about this. I've been thinking about a lot of things lately. Alexander's voice was quiet, and when Maya looked up, she found him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Before she could analyze that look further, her phone rang. Maya glanced at the screen and groaned. David Whitmore? Alexander asked, recognizing the name from their earlier conversation. Maya nodded, then answered with her professional voice. Hello, Mr. Whitmore. Maya, darling, I have wonderful news. David's voice boomed through the speaker. I've reconsidered our spring project. When can you start? Maya frowned. I thought you said budget constraints. All resolved. Amazing what a conversation with the right people can accomplish. Alex Reed speaks very highly of your work. Maya's eyes snapped to Alexander, who had suddenly become very interested in his laptop screen. Heat flooded her cheeks as the pieces clicked together. Mr. Whitmore, I appreciate the call, but I'm actually moving in a different direction with my business. Nonsense! This is a $50,000 project, Maya. You can't seriously be turning that down. Actually, I am. Thank you for thinking of me, but I'm not available. She hung up and slowly turned to face Alexander, who was still studiously avoiding her gaze. You called him, she said quietly. I might have mentioned your name in conversation. You called him after I specifically asked you not to. Alexander finally looked up, his expression defensive. Maya, it was just a casual mention. I ran into him at the country club yesterday, and when he started complaining about his landscaper, I suggested he reconsider his decision. The country club. Maya's voice was dangerously calm. Of course. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. Maya stood up, pacing to the window. This is why I don't work with people like you. You can't help yourselves. You see a problem, and you throw your influence at it without considering how that affects other people. People like me? Alexander's tone had cooled considerably. Maya spun around. Rich people, connected people, people who think money and networking solve everything. I was trying to help you. No, you were trying to manage me. There's a difference. Alexander stood up as well, his jaw tight. You know what? Maybe I was. Because watching you struggle with pride when there's a simple solution is incredibly frustrating. My pride isn't your problem to solve. It is when we're partners. Your financial stress affects our business planning. Your refusal to accept help affects our timeline. My what? My stubborn insistence on maintaining my integrity? Your stubborn insistence on making everything harder than it needs to be. They stared at each other across the breakfast nook, both breathing hard. The morning's easy collaboration felt like a distant memory. Maybe this partnership was a mistake, Maya said quietly. Something flickered across Alexander's face. Hurt, quickly masked by resignation. Maybe it was. The silence stretched between them, heavy with disappointment and wounded pride. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes and turned back to the window, not wanting Alexander to see how much his words had stung. Maya, his voice was softer now, tentative. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called David without discussing it with you first. No, you shouldn't have. And I shouldn't have said that about your pride. It's not pride. It's principles. I respect that, even if I don't always understand it. Maya's shoulders sagged slightly. I'm sorry, too. I know you were trying to help. I've worked so hard to build something on my own terms. When people swoop in with their connections and influence, it feels like they're saying what I've built isn't good enough. Maya, turn around, please. She did, reluctantly, and found Alexander standing much closer than she'd expected. His eyes were serious, sincere. What you've built is extraordinary. Not just the gardens, but your reputation, your skills, your integrity. I don't want to change any of that. I just want to help it grow. By making phone calls to country club friends? Alexander winced. Okay, that was poorly executed. But Maya, networking isn't inherently evil. Sometimes it's just people helping people. In your world, maybe. In my world, it usually comes with strings attached. What strings could I possibly have? We're partners. Your success is my success. Maya looked into his eyes, searching for hidden agendas or ulterior motives. All she saw was frustration, sincerity, and something else that made her pulse quicken despite their argument. I don't know what your strings are yet, she admitted, but everyone has them. Even you. The question caught her off guard. What do you mean? I mean, maybe your insistence on absolute independence isn't as noble as you think. Maybe it's just fear dressed up as principle. Maya felt like he'd slapped her. Fear of what? Fear of owing anyone anything, fear of being vulnerable, fear of letting someone else matter to you. The accuracy of his words made Maya's chest tight. That's not, isn't it? Maya, when was the last time you let someone take care of you? When was the last time you accepted help without feeling like you had to pay it back immediately? I don't need taking care of. Everyone needs taking care of sometimes. It's called being human. Maya felt tears threatening again. If I let people take care of me, they leave. It's better to rely on myself. The admission slipped out before she could stop it, raw and honest and more revealing than she'd intended. Alexander's expression softened completely. Who left? He asked gently. It doesn't matter. It does to me. Maya wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling exposed. My father. He left when I was 12. My mom worked 3 jobs after that, and I learned that depending on other people is a luxury we couldn't afford. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry. I don't need pity. It's not pity. It's understanding. Alexander moved closer, carefully, like he was approaching a wounded animal. Maya, I'm not going anywhere. This partnership, he gestured between them. Whatever this is, I'm committed to it. You don't know that. People say that all the time, and then life happens, and priorities change, and Maya, Alexander reached out, gently taking her hands. Look at me. She did, reluctantly. I spent 4 years avoiding this place because I was afraid of feelings I couldn't control or quantify. I understand the impulse to protect yourself, but some things are worth the risk. Maya felt her carefully constructed walls trembling. What things? Partnership, trust, connection. His thumbs brushed over her knuckles. Whatever this is between us. Maya's breath caught. Alexander, I know you feel it too. I see how you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. I see how you light up when we're working together, before your brain kicks in and reminds you to be cautious. Being cautious has kept me safe. But has it made you happy? The question hung between them, loaded with possibility and risk. Maya looked down at their joined hands, then back up into Alexander's eyes. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Do what? Trust someone. Let someone in. Build something with another person. Alexander smiled, soft and encouraging. One day at a time, like gardening, despite everything, Maya felt herself smile back. You're getting better at the plant metaphors. I'm learning from an excellent teacher. They stood there in the sun-drenched breakfast nook, hands linked, looking at each other like they were seeing something new and precious and terrifying. So, Alexander said finally, partners? Partners, Maya agreed, but no more country club interventions without discussion first. Deal. And Maya, next time I overstep, just tell me. Don't assume I have ulterior motives. Deal. As Alexander leaned down to seal their agreement with a kiss on her forehead, Maya felt something inside her chest unfurl like a flower turning toward sunlight. Maybe, just maybe, some risks were worth taking. 3 weeks later, Maya stood at the kitchen window watching 12 strangers wander through her beloved gardens, and wondered if this had been the worst idea in the history of terrible ideas. They're going to destroy everything, she muttered, watching an enthusiastic woman in designer gardening gloves attack a perfectly innocent lavender bush with pruning shears. Mrs. Henderson is just enthusiastic, Alexander said, appearing behind Maya with 2 cups of coffee. And that lavender needed deadheading anyway. She's massacring it. She's learning. There's a difference. Alexander handed her the coffee, his fingers brushing hers in the now familiar gesture that still made her pulse skip. Besides, you said yourself that plants are resilient. Maya accepted the coffee, but kept her worried gaze on the workshop participants scattered across the herb garden. I said some plants are resilient. I didn't say they were indestructible. Maya. Alexander's voice was gentle but firm. Trust your teaching. Trust them. Trust this. She turned to face him, taking in his dirt-smudged shirt and the relaxed confidence that had replaced his initial garden anxiety. Over the past month, Alexander had transformed from a destructive novice to someone who actually understood the rhythm of growing things. Watching him work alongside her students this morning, explaining soil composition with genuine enthusiasm, had done dangerous things to her heart. What if this fails? What if they hate it or get hurt or... Alexander set down his coffee and placed his hands on her shoulders. What if it succeeds? What if they leave here feeling connected to something beautiful and want to create their own version of it? Before Maya could respond, excited voices drifted in from the garden. Oh my God, smell this, someone called out. What is this incredible scent? Maya couldn't help but smile. That's the chocolate mint. I planted it near the seating area because the scent creates a memorable sensory experience that people associate with relaxation and pleasure. Alexander finished. Smart design choice. You've been paying attention. I've had an excellent teacher. The way Alexander looked at her when he said it made Maya's cheeks warm. They were interrupted by a knock on the kitchen door. Through the glass, Maya could see Janet Pearson, the estate's longtime neighbor and self-appointed guardian of Napa Valley property values. "Mrs. Pearson," Maya said, opening the door with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "What brings you by?" Janet's gaze swept past Maya to the groups of people visible in the garden, her expression pinched with disapproval. "I'm here about the traffic situation, Maya, and the noise. This is a residential area, not a commercial venue." "It's one weekend workshop," Maya said carefully. 12 people, all here by 10 and gone by 4. 12 people today. How many next weekend? How many when word gets out that you're running some sort of garden center operation?" Alexander appeared behind Maya, his presence immediately changing the dynamic. "Mrs. Pearson, isn't it? I'm Alexander Reed, Eleanor's grandson." Janet's demeanor shifted slightly, recognizing money and influence when she saw it. "Mr. Reed, I didn't realize you were involved in this enterprise." "Very involved. Maya and I are partners in developing educational programming for the estate." Alexander's smile was polite but steely. "I'm sure my grandmother would have loved seeing her gardens shared with people who appreciate them. Your grandmother understood the importance of maintaining neighborhood character. This kind of commercial activity is well within our property rights and local zoning regulations." Alexander interrupted smoothly. "I had our lawyers review everything thoroughly." Maya glanced at him in surprise. He hadn't mentioned lawyers. Janet's eyes narrowed. "Lawyers or not, some of us have concerns about the precedent this sets. Property values, traffic patterns, the general atmosphere of the area." "I understand your concerns," Maya said diplomatically. "Would it help if we provided you with our schedule in advance? We're only planning one weekend workshop per month, and that's 12 disruptions per year," Janet snapped. 12 times our quiet neighborhood will be overrun with strangers tramping through gardens, parking on our streets. "Actually, we provide shuttle service from designated parking areas in town," Alexander said. "No street parking required." Janet looked frustrated at having her complaints systematically addressed. This is still a fundamental change to the character of the neighborhood. Some things should remain private. Like education? Maya couldn't keep the edge out of her voice. Like teaching people to grow their own food and create beauty in their own spaces. Like maintaining the exclusivity that makes this area special. The word exclusivity hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Maya felt her temper rising, but Alexander stepped slightly forward. "Mrs. Pearson, I appreciate you sharing your concerns. Maya and I will certainly take them into consideration as we plan future programming. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have students waiting." It was a dismissal, polite but unmistakable. Janet's face reddened slightly, but she managed a stiff nod. "Of course, I do hope you'll be mindful of the community impact, Mr. Reed." After Janet left, Maya closed the door and leaned against it. "Well, that was fun. She'll come around," Alexander said. "Or she won't, and we'll deal with it either way." "You had lawyers review everything?" Alexander looked slightly sheepish. "I may have gotten a little protective about potential obstacles to our success." "Our success," Maya repeated, feeling that familiar flutter at the possessive pronoun. "Did I overstep again?" Maya considered this. The old Maya would have bristled at Alexander handling legal issues without consulting her. The new Maya, the Maya who was slowly learning to trust, felt mostly grateful. "No," she said. "You were protecting something we both care about. That's different." Alexander's smile was warm and relieved. "Good, because watching you teach this morning, seeing how passionate you are about sharing this knowledge, Maya, it's incredible. I don't want anyone to take that away from you." The sincerity in his voice made Maya's chest tight. "Alexander! Maya! Alexander!" A voice called from the garden. "Come see what we've created." They exchanged a look of shared amusement and headed outside, where the workshop participants had gathered around the demonstration area. What Maya saw made her breath catch. The 12 strangers had collaborated to create a small container garden arrangement that was genuinely lovely. Not perfect, not professional, but full of joy and creativity. Different textures, heights, and colors combined in ways that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. "We used everything you taught us," said Mrs. Henderson, beaming with pride. "Thriller, filler, spiller, complementary colors, plants that like the same growing conditions." "It's beautiful," Maya said, and meant it. "Can we take photos?" asked Tom, a retired teacher from Sacramento. "I want to recreate this feeling at home." As the group excitedly photographed their creation and exchanged contact information, Maya felt Alexander move beside her. "See," he murmured. "Trust." Maya watched her students, because that's what they were now, her students, chattering excitedly about their plans for home gardens, and felt something shift inside her chest. This was why she'd started gardening in the first place, not for the solitude, but for the connection between human hands and growing things, between people and the earth that sustained them. "Maya," called Susan, a young mother from San Francisco, "would you consider doing a kids' workshop? My 8-year-old is obsessed with plants after hearing me talk about today." "Oh, what about a couples' workshop?" suggested another participant. "My husband would love this, but he'd never sign up for something this nurturing on his own." Maya looked at Alexander, who was grinning at the enthusiasm their simple workshop had generated. "What do you think, partner?" she asked. "I think we're going to need a bigger calendar," Alexander replied. As the afternoon wound down and participants reluctantly prepared to leave, Maya found herself standing with Alexander in the herb garden, watching the last shuttle disappear down the drive. "So," Alexander said, "how do you feel about our first official success?" "Terrified and exhilarated in equal measure," Maya admitted. "Also grateful. I couldn't have done this alone." "You could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to." Maya turned to face him, struck by how natural this felt. The two of them, covered in dirt, tired but happy, planning something meaningful together. "Alexander," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Anything." "When you first came back here, was this what you imagined? Running workshops, dealing with cranky neighbors, teaching people about composting?" Alexander considered the question seriously. "Honestly, no. I imagined maybe fixing up the place and selling it, or keeping it as a weekend retreat." "What changed?" "You," he said simply. "Watching you work, seeing what you'd built here, learning what you could teach, it made me realize I'd been thinking about success all wrong." Maya felt her heart skip. "How so?" "I thought success meant scaling up, moving fast, maximizing profit. But watching you tend these gardens, seeing how you care about each plant, each student, that's a different kind of success. It's about depth instead of breadth, connection instead of conquest." Very philosophical for a tech CEO. Former tech CEO. "I'm transitioning to garden philosopher." Maya laughed, but Alexander's expression remained serious. "Maya, I need to tell you something." The change in his tone made her stomach flutter with nerves. "Okay. I sold my company last week." Maya blinked. "You sold it?" "Alexander, that's huge. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted to be sure this was what I really wanted before I made it official. I didn't want you to feel responsible for a decision I might regret." "And now?" Alexander reached out, taking her dirt-stained hands in his. "Now I know. This is what I want. This place, this work, this partnership. You." The last word hung between them, loaded with promise and possibility. Maya felt her breath catch as Alexander stepped closer. "Maya, I know we agreed to take this slow, to focus on the business first, but I can't pretend anymore that this is just professional for me." "It's not just professional for me either," Maya whispered. "Good," Alexander said, his voice rough with emotion. "Because I'm falling for you, Maya Chen. I'm falling for your passion, your principles, your incredible talent, and the way you make me want to be better than I thought possible." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. "Alexander." "You don't have to say anything back. I just needed you to know." Maya looked into his eyes, seeing vulnerability and hope, and something that made her feel braver than she'd ever felt before. "I'm falling for you too," she said, "and it terrifies me." Alexander's smile was brilliant. Good terrifying, or bad terrifying, the best kind of terrifying. As Alexander leaned down to kiss her, their first real kiss, soft and sweet and full of promise, Maya thought about roots and growth and the courage it took to plant something, knowing it might not survive. But as she kissed him back, surrounded by the gardens they were learning to tend together, Maya realized that some things were worth the risk of planting. 6 weeks after their first kiss, Maya woke up to the sound of Alexander pacing the cottage kitchen at 5:30 in the morning, his phone pressed to his ear and his voice tight with frustration. "No, David, you can't just change the terms retroactively," Alexander was saying. "We had an agreement." Maya slipped out of bed, wrapping Alexander's discarded button-down around herself. They'd been spending most nights together lately, falling asleep to the sound of crickets and waking up tangled together in her small bed. It felt natural, right? Like everything else about their relationship had begun to feel. But the tension in Alexander's voice was anything but natural. "What do you mean the board has concerns?" Alexander continued, running his free hand through his already messy hair. "The sale was finalized weeks ago." Maya padded into the kitchen, catching fragments of a conversation that made her stomach clench with anxiety. Alexander's company sale, board concerns, legal complications. None of it sounded good. Alexander looked up as she entered, his expression a mix of frustration and apology. He mouthed sorry while listening to whatever David was saying on the other end. "Fine," Alexander said finally. "But this is the last time, David. After this, I'm done." He hung up and immediately pulled Maya into his arms, burying his face in her neck. "Good morning to you too," Maya said, stroking his hair. "Bad news? Complicated news. My former business partner is having second thoughts about some of the sale terms. There might be legal issues." Maya pulled back to study his face. "What kind of legal issues?" Alexander sighed, leading her to the small breakfast table where he'd apparently been working for hours. Legal documents covered the surface, along with his laptop and multiple coffee cups. "The kind that might require me to be in San Francisco for the next few weeks, maybe longer." Maya felt her heart sink. "How much longer?" "I don't know. David's claiming there were undisclosed liabilities that affect the sale price. My lawyers say it's baseless, but we need to fight it properly. And you can't do that from here." Alexander's hesitation was answer enough. "Not effectively. This is the kind of thing that requires face-to-face meetings, depositions, document reviews. I'd need to be available full-time." Maya sank into the chair across from him, pulling his shirt tighter around herself. "When do you need to leave?" "Today." The word hit like a physical blow. Maya had known this moment might come, the moment when Alexander's old life reasserted itself and demanded his attention. She'd just hoped they'd have more time to solidify what they'd built together. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I know the timing is terrible. We have 3 workshops scheduled this month and the garden design class next week." "I can handle the workshops," Maya said quickly. "I did them before you, remember? But not alone, not with everything we've added to the curriculum." Maya forced a smile. "I'm a quick learner.